One of the members of one of the great bands out of the 1980s, Night Ranger, and not to mention the great band with Ted Nugent and Tommy Shaw, the great band Damn Yankees, Mr. Jack Blades. What's happening, Jack?
How you doing, man? Good to talk to you, Jeremy.
Good, man. Good to talk to you, too. And I know, Jack, you were born in Palm Desert, California. Now, who were your major musical influences as far as music growing up?
Well, actually, as I was growing up, I was just like everybody else. It's when I heard the Beatles, it was like I loved the Beatles, and then as I got older, it was sort of like that British. I loved like Cream and Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and everything like that. And then I got deep into Sly and the Family Stone, so I'm all over the map.
Wow, from the Beatles to Sly and the Family Stone. Wow, that's a huge jump. That's great.
I know, and it's kind of makes up for, that's kind of why I'm sort of like, I love all types of music, and I can, you kind of hear all kinds of different music in my solo records and stuff like that.
You brought so many great influences of yours to the band Rubicon. How did you meet up with Jerry Martini?
Well, it was funny. I was in Southern California. I was living in Palm Desert at the time, and one of the sax players of Sly and the Family Stone had a nightclub in Palm Springs, and I met up with him there. Pat Rizzo, he had like a place called Jilly's, which was Frank Sinatra used to hang out there, and all. It was kind of a wild place back then. And so I met Jerry Martini, the sax player, through the other sax player from Sly, and then he brought me to Northern California to form the band Rubicon. And actually, the first thing I did when I came up to Northern California in 1975, I was went right into the record plant in Sausalito and started doing a session with Sly. So it was pretty much like from the frying pan to the fire.
Wow, that's pretty damn quick, Jack. That's really quick.
Yeah, and it's been a great rock and roll ride ever since.
When you were with the band Rubicon, how did you guys come up with the single "I'm Gonna Take Care of Everything"?
Well, I think that was written by Max Haskett, who was the other singer in the band. He was a trumpet player singer. He used to be in a band called Cold Blood, which is another great funk rock horn band from the Bay Area, kind of like a Tower of Power with a woman singer, Lydia Pence. It was a great band back in the 70s, and so Max was the singer of that. He came up with it, and everybody liked that song. That was the first single. I mean, I can't even believe that you even know it.
Come on, Jack. I got to do my homework, man. We got to do my homework.
Shocking.
And then you kind of parted ways with Rubicon, and then did one of your roommates have a founding effect on the putting together of Night Ranger? One of your roommates you were rooming with, or something like that? What's the background on how Night Ranger came about?
Well, yeah, when Night Ranger, when Rubicon broke up, actually Brad Gillis was the guitarist for Night Ranger, was the guitarist in Rubicon, and Kelly Kagi was the touring drummer at the end of the band. And so when we broke up in 1979, at that time in Mill Valley in California, Northern California, my roommate was Alan Fitzgerald Fitz, who at that point was he was a bass player with Montrose, and then he was the keyboard player with Sammy Hagar. And he said, "Hey man, why don't you bring your three guys, and I know another guy from Sacramento. Why don't we put a band together and let's put a rock band together?" And I thought, well, okay, that's a great idea, and that's how Night Ranger was sort of like came about.
Wow, that is a great story. I mean, how does it all? It's so funny how life just kind of throws different obstacles your way and make the very best of it. I mean, how do you room with one of the members of Montrose? That's just great. That's a great story.
Yeah, it's funny how it happens. You never know when one door gets closed, the other one opens up. I thought when Rubicon ended, it was a tragedy. It was the same thing when Night Ranger broke up in 1989. I thought it was the worst thing on the planet. And like 5 days later, I was on a plane to New York and hooked up with Tommy Shaw and Ted Nugent. The next thing we know, that weekend, Damn Yankees was born.
How did Night Ranger get signed to Boardwalk Records?
Well, Night Ranger was sort of like, we started writing songs and playing some shows and everything like that, and we were basically passed on by every record company on the planet like twice. Mm-hmm. It was pretty funny. We just kept plowing away. We knew that we needed some guy, somebody. We just needed one person to say, "Look, yeah, I'll take a shot with these guys," and we knew that we had the goods. That we had a kick-ass American rock band.
Right.
Two guitars, two lead singers, two lead guitarists, and everything like that. And finally, one guy believed in us at Boardwalk Records, which was the same label that had Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. They had just come off with I Love Rock and Roll, so they had some cash, and they saw our band, and they signed us, and then we made our first album, Dawn Patrol, and went out and sold 1 million records.
The opening track, Jack, to the debut album, Dawn Patrol, was one of my favorite tunes that you've actually ever written, in my personal opinion. The great track, Don't Tell Me You Love Me. Who was that song written about?
Don't Tell Me You Love Me was just kind of a sort of like a, I don't know, I just had an idea of the whole idea of you know, you're in a relationship with a girl or whatever, and you're just like, look, you know, let's have fun every night. Just don't tell me you love me because I don't want to know about it. Just like, I mean, come on, man, let's just move on to the next thing. You know, when you're in your, when you're in your 20s, it's like, yeah, right, okay, yeah, love, whatever. Okay, next, just don't tell me you love me. I don't want to know. You know, and that's kind of where the song came about.
The song Sing Me Away, another great song off of Dawn Patrol, and you collaborated with Kelly Kagi on that track. Now, how did you guys collaborate on that specific tune?
Well, at that time, we were working for my mother-in-law. She had a florist in San Francisco, and we were going around delivering flowers to, like, you know, weddings and bar mitzvahs and all this kind of stuff. And Kelly had this idea for this chorus, you know, sing me away, sing me away. Yeah, but Kelly always, you know, he always needs to be he needs to get a little prodded a little bit to get, you know, to finish up something. So we sat down and I said, "Come on, let's finish that song. Let's finish that song and teach it to the band." So we sat down not sat down, but as we were driving around in this florist van, we would just write the lyrics and, you know, write the words down, and we came up with the verses and the chorus and kind of put the whole song together.
That's so cool. I love that. And Night Ranger was a huge success. I mean, their first 5 studio albums sold over 10 million copies worldwide. And what was the experience for you, Jack, of recording that great album, Midnight Madness?
I was just we had done the Dawn Patrol record. It was like flying. We were on tour with Sammy Hagar. Everything was going great. And then suddenly our record company went bankrupt, and we were just like, what? Suddenly there were no records in the stores, and nobody was answering the phone with the record company. And so our manager pulled us back, just went right back in the studio, and we said, come on, let's get off the road, go back in the studio, cut another record right away. And of course, because we had so much success, MCA just immediately just picked us up and, you know, said, okay, we'll we'll take you for your next record. And we're like, all right, let's do it. So we went right in the studio, and we'd actually written Sister Christian before, and we, for some reason, I don't know why, we didn't put it on our first album. And so we had that song, and we had, you know, we wrote, you know, You Can Still Rock in America, and when you close your eyes, and all these other hits that were on that record. And so we immediately went in, cut the record, and then went right back out on the road again, and just kind of kept the whole flow going.
And how did you guys come up with the staple song, Sister Christian? What's the background story on that tune?
Kelly wrote that song. It was about our drummer, Kelly Kagi, wrote it and sang it, and it was basically about his sister, Christy, who was grown up in a small town in Oregon.
And just kind of like her life experiences, basically?
Yeah, like cruising up and down the street and, you know, motoring, what they called was motoring and stuff like that. So that's kind of where that all came from. And
the great rocker, Jack, When You Close Your Eyes, was written basically by everybody in the band kind of collaborated on that tune, correct?
Not really. It was really, like, I came in with the song, with the chorus and everything like that, and I think Brad added something to it, and I don't know if I think Fitz, our keyboard player, might have put some, like, a chord change or something like that in it, or something like that. I remember not having the lyrics for it, and I had to like hurry up and write all the words. You know, the whole music was finished and the chorus was done. I didn't have any verses, and I'm like, oh shoot. So I had to sit around. I just hid for a weekend and wrote all the words to that one.
And the band's third album, Seven Wishes, which was a great release in May of 1985, and I've always loved the song Sentimental Street, and that was entirely written by you. What's the background on Sentimental Street? How did you come up, how were you inspired for that song?
Well, Sentimental Street is kind of a, in San Francisco, as you're driving towards the airport, there's an area, it's called, out in the avenues, and it's out on sort of like out-a-ways in San Francisco beyond Golden Gate Park, and what it is, it's like a bunch of street names, but then they're all avenues. It's like, you know, like Judah and 10th Avenue and Santiago and 20th Avenue. So they call it Out in the Avenues, and I always thought, you know, I'd always be driving down that place, going to the airport or driving around. I'm thinking, you know, it'd be interesting to write a song just called, like, you know, name a street called Sentimental Street in the Avenues, you know. So it's kind of, it was inspired by living in San Francisco, really.
And the tune 4 in the morning, did that have to do after, like, you know, all the boys walking out of the bar and it's 4 in the morning, or what was the background on 4 in the morning?
Actually, 4 in the morning, it was one of those songs where I just woke up literally at 4 in the morning and had an idea for a song. I can't take anymore, I can't fake anymore, such a hard time loving you. And I felt, I don't want to call it hard time loving you or something like that. And I'm like,
right.
What is, you know, and here I was at like 4 in the morning writing this down, literally writing it down. I'm like, I'll just start off the words with, like, here I am, 4 in the morning, came without a warning. It's like freaking woke me right up. So that's kind of where that song came from.
Night Ranger soon broke up around 1989, and then you were introduced to Tommy Shaw and Ted Nugent. How in the world did 3 pioneers all get together and collaboratively become the band Damn Yankees. How did that all come about?
Well, a friend of mine that ran Geffen Records had, his name was John Clodner. His name is John Clodner, and he's a famous A&R guy that for all the Aerosmith stuff and Guns N' all these bands. And John, knew he had Tommy and Ted working in New York on some songs, and something just kind of wasn't clicking and everything like that. And he had heard. He'd heard that Night Ranger had split up, and he and I were friends, and he said, I'd never try to get you, I'd never pull you out of a band, but I heard your band split up. Listen, I have Ted and Tommy working on songs in New York, and I'd like to fly you in there. So he actually flew me into New York and put us all together in that weekend, and, Tommy and I hit it off famously. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then with Ted, it was just great and everything like that. And so, we all got together, but for some reason, he didn't end up signing it. Didn't end up going on Geffen. So I took it over to a friend of mine who ran Warner Brothers Records, and we'd made a couple demos. I think we demoed High Enough and Coming of Age and maybe Come Again, and he played the first two songs, and we came to High Enough, and about halfway through the song, he just turned it off and said, have your lawyer call us in the morning. Done deal.
Yeah, it's a great track. And I know, Jack, you went on to produce great albums for bands like Great White and Ted Nugent and so many more.
Right.
What are you working on today, Jack?
Well, Tommy Shaw just left my house last week. We're doing another Shaw Blades record, Shaw Blades Influence 2, and he was up here all last week, and we're about halfway through with that record, actually a little bit more, and of course my solo record and everything like that, and I've got my solo records just getting ready to be released, I think next week. So I'm pretty excited about that, and a new single, Back in the Game, and the video that's on YouTube right now. Everybody should go check that out. It's great. It's great. Like I made a mini war movie. Very cool.
Very, very cool. I can't wait to hear all the new material, especially that's so funny. Yeah, Tommy just left the house last week. I'm just like, wow, that's so cool.
That's our life. That's our life.
And what's the best website for you, Jack, to get more information on you for your fans?
JackBlades.net.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I got that out there. Mr. Jack Blades, thank you so very much for being a part of the 80s experience tonight. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. And I want everybody to keep listening. My new record's coming out. It's called, Rock and Roll Ride, because it basically chronicles my entire life is in this rock and roll business this last 30 years. And that record will be out, I think, next week. So everybody check that out and check out the video.
Wonderful, Jack. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.